In my research on leadership, one of the influence tactics that comes out as strongest, and for many leaders, is their ability to persuade people, kind of move them from one point of view or one perspective or one kind of action to another. When you interview managers, as I have, and you ask them what percentage of their day is actually tied up in the activity of persuasion, you'll hear a range from 30 to up to 100%. A manager's job is largely, in many cases, persuading people. The question, though, that I always ask after that is, how much time are you formally preparing to persuade others? And outside of a few events that occur during the year, most of the time, you and I spend actually very little time. Many managers tell me 5% max preparation per day. Not only that, but they describe to me the places where they prepare: the shower in the morning, the drive to work, walking down a hallway to the meeting. Unlikely places, but also poor places to prepare for important issues you're trying to convince your team about. The paradox is that you and I rely upon persuasion, but we actually put limited effort in, with, again, the exception of a few events each year. What I want to share with you are the 4 things that I've learned about people who are very effective persuaders. The first is they think about their credibility, and they understand that in front of every audience there are 2 dimensions that they're being assessed on. One is the one that you and I often think of, our expertise or track record. But by the way, that's never enough. They, the best persuaders, are thinking about the quality and depth of relationship they have with the individuals in the room that they're trying to move. They often realize that they will have gaps on either of these dimensions, and they bring in substitutes to bolster their credibility. So individuals with whom they have a limited relationship, they'll ask colleagues who know that person really well to help them in the persuasion effort. On expertise, they'll often bring in somebody who's even more expert or seen as more objective. The second dimension they think about is what we call framing, and that is the opening argument, why we need to do what I'm trying to persuade you about. This dimension requires that you think very deeply about common ground. In other words, what is it from the listener's vantage point that links your argument to their world? What is the advantage from their perspective? If you cannot find one, that means you can't find common ground. Critical to find links of advantage to the people you're persuading. The third dimension is what I call compelling positions. If you look at most persuasion, it has anywhere from 3 to 5 arguments. Now let's go back and think about how we prepare. If we're doing it casually, we're usually focused on that opening argument. We want to get their attention. We want to move them. Sometimes we'll put a bit of attention into the last argument. That's where we close and hopefully get everybody aligned behind the idea. Well, if you look really closely at the research on persuasion and the work I've done, you will see that it's actually the middle arguments that are the key. And those are the ones that are usually the poorest prepared and have the weakest examples or data to support them. So look carefully at the flow of your arguments. Focus in on those middle ones. They're very, very pivotal. The final dimension is your ability to connect emotionally with where your audience is at. In any given situation, they may not be in the same emotional space that you're in. And if you don't read them correctly and go right to their space first and then bring them to yours, you will lose credibility in their eyes. So it's pivotal that you understand the reactions they're bringing into the room before you even begin to move them, to persuade them. And remember, the limits on your influence are the limits on your ability to persuade others.